I was in the middle of signing a $180,000 supply contract when my phone buzzed on the desk. I figured it could wait. Finished the signature, handed the papers back to the contractor, walked him out to the parking lot. Good handshake, solid deal, the kind of afternoon that makes 22 years of building something feel worth it. I got back to my office, poured the last of the morning coffee, and hit play on the voicemail. Mr. Kowalski, this is Dr. Hargrove's office calling regarding your recent STD screening. Both you and your wife have tested positive for chlamydia. We need you both to come in for treatment as soon as possible. Please call us back at. I set the cup down, both of us positive. My name is Gary Kowalski. I'm 54 years old. I run Kowalski Supply Co. out of Columbus, Ohio, building materials, commercial distribution. 28 employees, been at it since I was 32. I get here at 5:30 a.m. and I leave when the last driver clocks out. I'm not a complicated man. I don't cut corners on estimates, I don't oversell product people don't need, and I have a reputation for doing what I say I'm going to do. I also have not touched my wife in 11 months. Not once, not since the night Sheila sat me down in the kitchen and told me she needed space and moved herself into the guest bedroom. Not since the 5 a.m. gym session started. Not since the phone went permanently face down on every counter in the house. Not since the pharmaceutical conferences started happening every other month, always in cities I'd never heard her mention before. So when I heard that message, both of you, I didn't explode. I didn't call her. I didn't even move for about 30 seconds. I just stood in my office, looking out at the loading dock, running the math. Sheila had gone to her doctor, got a full screening, tested positive, and when the nurse asked her to list her current sexual partner, she wrote down my name, knowing full well we hadn't been in the same bed in nearly a year. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. I called the clinic back, asked to speak with someone directly. The receptionist explained the protocol. When a patient tests positive, the clinic contacts all listed partners as a standard notification. Sheila had put my name down as her current partner. That's why they called. I hadn't been tested. They were just following procedure. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes and thought through every single thing I was about to do next, because I knew one thing for certain. The worst move I could make right now was going home. I called my buddy Wade Hoffman, electrician, known him since we were both broke and 25, the kind of friend who doesn't ask questions until you're ready. I told him I needed his couch for the night. He said fine, he'd leave the key under the mat. I stopped at the supply room, grabbed a change of clothes I kept there for long days, and drove to Wade's place with my phone turned off. He handed me a beer when I walked in. We sat on the back porch. I stared at the yard for a while, then I told him everything. The voicemail, the 11 months, the gym, the phone, the conferences. Wade didn't say much. He's not a talker. He just listened, and when I finished, he said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not walking in blind. You need a lawyer?" "That's the first call I'm making in the morning." He nodded. We finished the beers. Then he said, "You know what gets me? She thought you'd just take it." That hit harder than the diagnosis. I didn't sleep much. Lay on Wade's couch running through 19 years of marriage looking for the exact moment things went sideways. I could identify the drift, the gym, the phone, the guest bedroom, but none of it felt like a clear line. It felt like fog, like standing too close to something to see the shape of it. By 4 a.m., I'd stopped looking for the moment and started thinking about what came next. At 8 a.m. sharp, I called Perry Aldridge. Perry is a family law attorney. Mid-50s, gray around the temples, the kind of guy who has seen every variation of a bad divorce and doesn't rattle easily. His assistant put me through immediately. I laid out the whole thing, start to finish. The voicemail, the 11 months, the behavior changes, the conferences, the phone. Perry didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, "First thing, get your own test done today, not tomorrow, today. We need documentation that you're clean, dated, with a physician's letter attached." That piece of paper is going to do a lot of heavy lifting. Already planning it. Good. Second thing, and this is important, do not confront her. Do not call her. Do not change anything about your routine. Right now, you know something she doesn't know you know. That is your only advantage, and the second you use it, it's gone. The moment she suspects anything, she'll lawyer up, get defensive, and start moving money. You think she'd do that? I think anyone who lists their estranged spouse as a current sexual partner on a medical form is already thinking 3 steps ahead, he said. Don't underestimate her. He pulled out a legal pad. I could hear him writing. Here's what we're building. Proof of the affair, full financial records on every joint account going back 12 months, your clean test results paired with her positive ones, and documentation of the time gap. In Ohio, adultery is grounds for an at-fault divorce. That affects property division and spousal support significantly. What about the company? Perry paused. That's actually the most important thing we need to talk about. If Sheila's attorney is worth anything, The first thing they'll go after is Kowalski Supply Co. Ohio is an equitable distribution state. She could argue for up to 50% of the business value depending on how it's structured and how long you've been married. I felt something tighten in my chest. 22 years of 5:30 a.m. starts. 22 years of payroll, contracts, drivers, inventory. Built from nothing. How do we protect it? We document everything, Perry said. Business formation records, your capital contributions, any agreements showing the company was established before certain marital milestones. And if she committed adultery, that changes the calculus entirely under Ohio law. And at fault finding weakens her claim substantially. Then we find the proof. That's exactly right, he said. I'm going to refer you to someone. Her name is Lorraine Voss, former police detective, runs her own firm now. She's thorough and she's fast. Call her today. That afternoon I drove to see Neil Fowler. He has been my doctor for 16 years, knows my history, knows my habits, doesn't waste words. I sat down in his office, played him the voicemail off my phone, and told him the situation in plain terms. He listened without expression. When I finished, he said, "When was the last time you were sexually active?" 11 months ago, with Sheila. And since then, nothing. No other partners, nobody, he made a note. I'm going to run a full panel. If you haven't been intimate with anyone in nearly a year and you're showing no symptoms, your results should reflect that. And when they come back, I'll provide a signed letter stating your status and the date of your last reported sexual contact, dated on clinic letterhead. I need it to hold up. I said it will. He drew blood, ran the swabs, sent me home with instructions to wait 48 hours. I drove back to Wade's place, stopped at a diner on the way, ate something I don't remember tasting, and sat with the quiet. Those 48 hours were the longest I can recall in recent memory, not because I was scared of the results. I knew what they'd show. It was the waiting with the knowledge of what was already true, unable to move, unable to say anything, having to act like nothing was wrong when I went back to the office the next morning and signed invoices, and took calls and talked to my drivers like it was a normal week. Sheila texted me Tuesday evening. Working late, don't wait up? Same as a dozen other Tuesdays. I read it, set the phone down, and went back to the inventory report on my desk. The results came back Thursday morning. Negative across the board, chlamydia, negative. Gonorrhea, negative, HIV, negative, everything clean. I sat in my truck in Neil's parking lot and read that paper 3 times. Then I called Perry. Get the letter from Fowler today, he said. Bring it to my office tomorrow, and call Lorraine Voss this afternoon. Lorraine Voss met me at a coffee shop near her office. She showed up looking like someone's favorite aunt, reading glasses on a chain, sensible jacket. Nothing about her that said former police detective. But the way she listened told the story. Still direct, no reaction to anything I said. Your attorney sent the basics, she said. Tell me what you've observed directly. I told her about Lance Decker, personal trainer at the gym Sheila had been going to since the guest bedroom situation started. I'd seen his name on her phone once about 7 months back when she'd left it face up by accident. A text thread. I didn't read it. At the time I told myself it was nothing. Lorraine wrote the name down. Vehicle. She drives a company car, gray Nissan Altima. I have the plate. I gave her the number. She wrote it down without looking up. What's her weekly pattern? I walked her through it. Gym at 5 a.m., back by 7, office by 8:30. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons she blocked as client visits on the shared calendar we used to use. I hadn't looked at that calendar in months, but I still had access. Don't touch the calendar. Lorraine said, don't look at it again. Don't do anything that creates a digital footprint showing you were monitoring her. Understood? Don't change your schedule. Don't come home late to avoid her. Don't act cold. If she asks you anything, answer normally. The goal is for her to feel like nothing has changed. How long will this take? If she's running a consistent pattern, a week, maybe less. She closed her notepad. One more thing. You mentioned a personal trainer. Do you know anything else about him? How long he's been at that gym, whether he has other clients in common with your wife, anything like that. I thought about it. She mentioned the gym about 13 months ago, said she wanted to start working with a trainer. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Lorraine nodded slowly. In my experience, when someone like that enters the picture around the same time the dynamic at home starts shifting, it's rarely a coincidence. These situations usually don't start with the affair. They start with someone deciding they want a different life and then finding the person who fits that picture. I didn't say anything to that. She was probably right. Didn't make it easier to hear. I'll be in touch, she said. She picked up her coffee, stood, and left. I sat there for a few minutes after she walked out. Outside the window, Columbus was doing what it always does in November: gray sky, bare trees, people moving fast between buildings with their collars up. I watched a delivery truck turn the corner and thought about my own drivers, my own loading dock, My own 5:30 a.m. routine that had stayed exactly the same for 22 years while everything around it had apparently been shifting without my noticing. I paid the check and went back to work. Lorraine called me 9 days later. "I have what you need," she said. "Can you meet tomorrow morning?" She laid it out across the table in a conference room at Perry's office. Printed photos, time-stamped, organized by date. Sheila arrived at the gym each morning as expected, but she wasn't working out. She was meeting Lance Decker in the parking lot. They'd talk for a few minutes, leave separately, and turn up at a coffee shop 2 miles away from there. They drove to a small rental house on the east side of Columbus. "The property is leased under his name," Lorraine said. I traced it through his vehicle registration. The DMV address matched a rental listing. Her car was there every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, consistent across all 9 days of observation. Average stay, just under 2 hours. She slid the last photo across the table. Sheila's gray Altima in the driveway, Lance's truck beside it, timestamp in the corner. Perry looked at me. "That's your foundation. But there's something else." He opened a second folder. I pulled the joint account records through pre-filing discovery prep. In Ohio, once you retain a divorce attorney, we can request joint account history going back 3 years. What I found is that over the past 8 months, Sheila made 23 separate transfers out of your household account into a personal account you're not listed on. Total amount? $14,200. I looked at the spreadsheet. Every transfer was between $400 and $800 spaced out. Irregular enough to not trigger a pattern at first glance. She was building an exit fund, Perry said. In Ohio, that qualifies as waste of marital assets. It's a separate and additional basis for the at-fault claim, and it directly affects how the court views property division. I stared at the number, $14,200, pulled out in small amounts over 8 months while I was signing contracts and running payroll and getting to the office at 5:30 every morning. "So she was planning this," I said. "For at least 8 months, Perry said, possibly longer." Perry gave me a few seconds to sit with that number before he continued. "Here's where we are," he said, and started going through the file. "We have medical records showing Sheila tested positive for an STD. We have a signed letter from Dr. Fowler confirming you tested negative across the board, dated with a note that your last reported sexual contact was 11 months prior. We have photographic evidence of a consistent pattern of meetings between Sheila and Lance Decker at a private rental property. And we have documentation of 23 unauthorized transfers totaling $14,200 from your joint household account." He set the pen down. "Under Ohio Revised Code, adultery is grounds for an at-fault divorce that directly affects spousal support. Combined with the waste of marital assets finding her claim against Kowalski Supply Co. becomes significantly weaker. It doesn't disappear entirely, but we can structure the settlement to protect the business." "What does that look like in real terms?" "You retain full ownership of the company. She keeps her vehicle, her personal retirement accounts, whatever is in that separate account she's been building. Marital debts split down the middle, no alimony, and if she fights it, then we file the formal at-fault complaint, and everything goes into the public record. The photos, the transfers, the test results, all of it, her name, his name, the address of that rental house. Her employer finds out, his clients find out." Perry picked up his pen again. "Most people, when they understand what discovery actually looks like, decide the settlement is the better option." I nodded. "Write the letter." Perry drafted it over the next 2 days. I reviewed every line. It was professional, factual, and thorough. No extra words, no drama. Just a clear statement of what we had and what we were proposing. The letter went out on a Monday morning. Certified mail, delivered to Sheila's office building, signed for by the front desk receptionist at 9:47 a.m. I know the exact time because Perry's assistant confirmed the delivery. I went to work that day like any other day. Approved a materials order for a contractor in Westerville, talked through a routing issue with 2 of my drivers, ate lunch at my desk. Around 3 p.m., I looked out the office window at the loading dock and watched a shipment go out and thought about the fact that 22 years of showing up had produced something real, something that ran whether I was watching or not, and that I was not going to hand any piece of it to someone who had spent the last 8 months quietly trying to position herself to take it. Sheila called at 6:18 p.m. I was still at the office. I let it ring. She called again at 6:24, and again at 6:31. The 4th call I picked up. "Gary," her voice was tight, "I need to talk to you about this letter, okay? This isn't what it looks like. You don't have the full picture." "I have photographs," I said. "I have bank records, I have a clean test result and a letter from my doctor." "That's a pretty complete picture." Silence on the other end. "Gary, please, we've been together for 19 years. You can't just do this. You moved into the guest bedroom 11 months ago," I said. "You told your doctor I was your current sexual partner." You transferred $14,200 out of our joint account in small amounts over 8 months. You were planning this long before I was. That's not fair. Sign the papers, Sheila. Take the settlement, because if you don't, Perry files the formal complaint, and everything we have goes into the public record. Your office, Lance's gym, all of it. She started to say something. I talked over her, not loud, just steady. I'm not angry. I'm not looking to destroy you, but I built that company for 22 years, and I'm not going to lose it because you decided you wanted a different life. Sign the papers. I hung up. She called back twice more that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, I got to the office at 5:30, same as always, poured the same bad coffee, and started going through the same stack of invoices. One of my drivers, a guy named Pete, who's been with me for 11 years, stuck his head in around 6 and said the left rear tire on truck 4 was showing low pressure. I told him to pull it in after the morning run, and we'd have a look. Normal morning, normal problems. Exactly the kind of day that reminded me what I was actually protecting. Perry called me on day 4 to say Sheila had retained an attorney. He didn't sound concerned. Her lawyer is going to probe the business valuation first, Perry said. That's standard. They'll request financial records for Kowalski Supply going back 3 to 5 years. Let them look, I said. Everything's clean. I know. I just want you prepared for it to take a few weeks. These things have a rhythm. It took 8 days total from the time she received the letter. Her attorney sent over the signed settlement agreement on a Wednesday afternoon. Perry called me while I was in the middle of a vendor meeting. I stepped out into the hallway, read the summary he gave me, and said, "Is it what we proposed?" Every line, Perry said, "No alimony. You retain full ownership of Kowalski Supply Co. She keeps her vehicle, her retirement accounts, and her personal savings. Debts split equally." I stood in the hallway of my own building for a moment, looking at the framed photo of the original loading dock we had when I first opened. 2 bays, 1 truck, a staff of 4, file it, I said. Already done, Perry said. The divorce was finalized 60 days after she signed. Ohio uncontested dissolution runs on a fixed timeline once both parties agree. Perry had told me that from day 1. I spent those 60 days doing what I always do. Early mornings, long days, bad coffee, invoices, contracts, driver schedules. The work didn't care about my personal life. The loading dock still needed to be cleared by 7 a.m. The vendors still needed answers by end of day. That routine, which I had kept for 22 years without thinking much about it, turned out to be the most stabilizing thing I had going. There were hard nights. I won't pretend otherwise. 19 years is a long time to share a life with someone, and even when that life had been reduced to polite exchanges over coffee and separate bedrooms, the absence of it left a gap that didn't fill quickly. I'd come home to a quiet house, eat something simple, sit with the news on low, and occasionally catch myself doing the mental math on where it all went sideways. I stopped doing that after a while. The math didn't add up to anything useful. What I focused on instead was Lance Decker. Lorraine had given me enough information to know he was married. His wife's name was Renee Decker. She taught elementary school on the west side of Columbus. From what Lorraine had observed during the 9 days of surveillance, Renee had no apparent idea what her husband was doing on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I thought about that for a few weeks. I wasn't sure it was my place. I wasn't sure it would help anything or just create more collateral damage in a situation that already had plenty. Then I thought about what Wade had said the first night. She thought you'd just take it. Renee Decker hadn't done anything to me. She hadn't done anything wrong at all as far as I could tell. And she was living in the same fog I'd been living in, except she didn't have a voicemail from a doctor's office to cut through it. I printed 2 of Lorraine's photos, the ones with the clearest timestamp and Sheila's plate number visible. I put them in a plain envelope with no return address and mailed them to the school where Renee worked. No note, just the photos. 2 weeks later, according to county court records that are publicly available online, Renee Decker filed for divorce. I don't know what she said to Lance. I don't know what he told her. I didn't follow it. I just noted it and moved on. Lance lost his position at the gym shortly after. I heard it secondhand from a contractor who used the same facility. Apparently, a few of his clients asked questions when the story started getting around, and the gym ownership decided the situation was not good for the business. Last I heard, he picked up part-time hours at a fitness center well outside the county. I didn't track it further. Not my concern. Sheila relocated to Cincinnati about 4 months after the divorce was final. New sales territory. Fresh start. I heard it through a mutual acquaintance, not from her directly. We haven't spoken since the night she called about the letter. I genuinely hope she figures out whatever she was looking for. I mean that, not because I have warm feelings about what happened, but because carrying anger at a person who is no longer in your life is like running a machine that isn't connected to anything. It burns fuel and produces nothing. I decided early on that I wasn't going to do that. The company had a strong year. Kowalski's Supply Co. closed out with the best revenue numbers since I founded it. I added 3 new commercial accounts in the fourth quarter, brought on a second dispatcher to handle the volume, and finally got around to resurfacing the East Bay floor, which had needed it for 2 years. 22 employees, same loading dock, just bigger. Same 5:30 a.m. start time. I'm not telling that to score points. I'm telling it because when Perry first said the words 50% of the business value, something went cold in me that I hadn't felt before. That company is not just a revenue number, it's 22 years of decisions, relationships, reputation, people who depend on it for their livelihood. It was worth protecting. It turned out to be protectable. That matters. About 7 months after the divorce was finalized, on a Friday evening when I was closing up the office, someone knocked on the front door. I assumed it was a late delivery. We get those occasionally. I unlocked it and found a woman I didn't immediately recognize. Early 40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a jacket with a school logo on the left chest. She looked like she wasn't sure she should be there. Mr. Kowalski? Yeah, my name is Renee Decker. I think you might know who I am. I looked at her for a moment. I said. I'm not here to cause any trouble, she said. I just wanted to say something in person. I've been trying to figure out how to do it for a few months. I held the door open. You want to come in? She shook her head. I'll just say it here. Whoever sent me those photos did me a favor. I'd been going in circles for almost a year, suspecting things, second-guessing myself, wondering if I was reading too much into things. And then that envelope showed up, and I had something real to hold on to. She paused. I just wanted to say thank you. I don't know what you're talking about, I said. She almost smiled at that. That's fair. We stood in the doorway for a moment. The parking lot was quiet behind her. One of my trucks was still parked at the far end, keys in the office. Can I ask you something? She said. Go ahead. Does it get easier? The part after. When you're just back to your regular life and you're supposed to feel okay about it. I thought about that, honestly. It gets quieter, I said. And quiet starts to feel pretty good after a while. She nodded like that meant something to her. Okay, she said. That's good to know. I asked if she wanted to grab a cup of coffee sometime. Not that night, just sometime. She said she'd think about it. I said that was fair. She called the following Thursday. We met at a diner about halfway between her school and my office. Sat there for almost 3 hours. She told me about Lance, the way things had slowly shifted over a couple of years. The gaslighting, the way he made her feel like her instincts were broken when they were actually the only thing working correctly. I told her about Sheila, the guest bedroom, the 11 months, the voicemail that started everything. At some point, she said, the worst part was realizing I'd spent so long trying to be understanding that I'd talked myself out of seeing what was actually happening. I knew that feeling well. I'd done the same thing for longer than I wanted to admit. We finished our coffee, walked out to the parking lot, stood by our cars in the cold for a few minutes just talking. She mentioned a diner closer to her side of town that had better pie. I said that sounded like a reason to try it. Same time next week? She asked. Yeah, I said. I'd like that. We've been taking it slow. Dinners, a few weekend drives out past the city where the roads go quiet. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. We both know what happens when you skip past the warning signs and hope things work out. Neither of us has any interest in repeating that. What I've learned in the past year is that patience is not a passive thing. People think of it that way, like patience just means sitting still and waiting. But the patience I'm talking about is active. It's the decision made over and over again in the middle of something hard to not react until you're ready, to gather what you need before you move, to protect what matters most by not tipping your hand too early. The night I got that voicemail, I had 2 options. I could go home, confront Sheila, let the emotion drive the conversation, and hand her every advantage in what was about to become a legal and financial fight. Or I could go quiet, think straight, and build a case the same way I built my company. One solid piece at a time, no shortcuts, no wasted moves. I chose quiet. That choice saved my business. It saved 22 years of early mornings and payroll and contracts and the trust of 22 people who show up to that loading dock every day, because Kowalski's Supply is a place worth showing up to. Sheila was counting on me to react. So was Lance, probably, in the way that people who are doing something wrong always count on the other person to blow up first, because it shifts the story. It makes the person who got hurt look like the problem. I didn't give either of them that. I'm not angry now. I want to be clear about that. I've had people ask me, since word got around the way it does in a city this size, whether I'm bitter about the years. The answer is no. Not because I think what happened was acceptable, but because bitterness is expensive. It costs you sleep, it costs you focus, and it costs you the forward movement that is the only thing that actually helps. The company had its best revenue year since founding. I've got good people around me. I get to the office at 5:30 a.m., and the work is still there waiting, same as always. That's not nothing. At 54, after everything, that's actually quite a lot. And Renee and I are figuring out what comes next, slowly, carefully, with our eyes open. That's all you can ask for. If you've ever gotten a call that changed everything, this one is for you. If you've ever had the ground shift under a life you thought you understood and felt the pull to blow up instead of think, this is for you. Here's what I know. The moment you go quiet and start building your case, you take the power back, document everything. Get your own answers before you show your hand. Protect what you built. And when the time comes to move, move clean. No rage, no drama, just facts on a table. That's not weakness. That is the only approach that actually works. You're not paranoid for trusting what your gut has been telling you. You're just paying attention. Believe what you see. Then build your case. Walk away with everything you earned. Hit subscribe if this one hit home. And if you've ever had to rebuild after someone tried to take what was yours, drop a comment below. You already know what to say.